My family grew up in Tampa in a Christian family. Tampa and Ybor City, it was in the early 60s that we moved into the area. And church was a very significant part of our life. We lived on 22nd Street in Osborne. One of the houses we lived in is still there if you go past. If you're getting down that way, you'll see that little home there on the west side of the road. We lived in that small home, and it was about 3 blocks from Martin and Rhoda's, Rachel's Conrad's home over on Wilder. So we lived close by. And that's just to give you sort of the proximity of our families at that time. Rhoda and Martin's home was always a welcoming home. I knew Rhoda first growing up as a small child at Ida Street, and then later at Ybor City, and later when Urban Renewal relocated us out to North Tampa, out at the North Tampa Church. My earliest memories of Rhoda were as a children's church leader, when she would teach us some of those songs back in the Sunday school room behind the garage behind Ida Street. And so we would go out there, even when it was raining, we would get out there some way. But dear Sister Rhoda would teach us songs from an easel with large poster board with the letters written in large block letters, and she would, with that very sweet voice, teach us songs and lead us through those songs. And following that, we would always have a Bible story presented from I'd call it the video of the day, which was flannel graph. And we would be excited as she would put those characters up and tell us the stories out of the Bible. She was also a Sunday school teacher then for years after that. Often it was because we had enough boys and girls, she would teach the girls. And sometimes the boys too. I remember later in the 8th grade, she was our Sunday school teacher at that time. But on Rhoda's passing earlier this year, my sister and brothers were reminiscing, just speaking of Rhoda and our memories a little bit. Jim was recalling some of the Bible stories taught by Rhoda, and also one very specific summer Bible school in Ybor City, where she taught us Yeshu Say Hi. Yeshu Say Hi. As Jim mentioned that, it came back and would just roll off of our tongues. We don't know exactly what it means, so we're on a quest to find out. We think it was Japanese. I'm thinking that it was Jesus Saves. Jim thought that it was probably greetings. My name is Jim. Who are you? So I'm not sure. We'll find out. If any of you know Japanese, we'd like to find out whether that is Japanese and then what it means. But she would teach us that in the setting of missions and of spreading the good news. That's why I believe it's probably Jesus Saves. My sister Grace also had a lot of memories about Rhoda, and also Rachel. You and Grace are about the same age. She remembered Rhoda also as a very good listener, and one who would know how to draw the students out in the girls' Sunday school class. Very lively discussions. She also recalled Rhoda's quiet humor, her warm personality, her gift of hospitality, which we've heard a lot about here today, and how she would always, her ministry of hospitality always was very complimentary to her husband, the pastor, and later the bishop. In the early days, this is one of my sister's memories, in the early days, one December, the Lehmans were still living in the Ida Street parsonage next to the church. Rhoda had the young girls from church come over and help her and Rachel make Christmas cookies. They had a great time. Later, when our small church would go caroling in the community, we would deliver the Christmas cookies to the families that we were singing for. And Rhoda would always make the point to say, these cookies were made by the girls' Sunday school class. And Grace always remembered feeling Rhoda making her feel so special as making these cookies. First of all, helping show them how to make cookies, and then making them feel appreciated when they were delivered. I remember when we'd come back from caroling, we would have hot chocolate and cookies at the Lehman's house. Grace also shared a more humorous story, and I didn't know if I should share this or not, but I think I will. It was one Wednesday evening. We were getting ready for prayer meeting, and it was Rachel, Louise, and Sue Hurst, and my sister Grace were standing there talking, whatever girls are doing. And anyway, Rachel and her mother walked in. It was just a little late, but they walked in. And the girls were listening to Rhoda talk to the ladies there, apologizing for coming in a little late, but said they had been to the dentist. So I don't know if you recall that. But in a rather embarrassed way, Rhoda had told the ladies that the dentist had asked if she had ever worn makeup. And of course, Rhoda said no, that she didn't. She was surprised that the dentist would be that forward. But then the dentist proceeded to say that he and his assistant had considered putting lipstick on Rhoda when she was in the chair. And Rhoda was even more surprised at that. But of course, the girls heard that and laughed and thought it was funny. They thought it was that it was rude too, and they thought that the dentist was being very much out of place in doing that. As Mennonite young girls, the thought of wearing lipstick seemed demeaning and scandalous. Rhoda was a living, indelible, and this is the point that Grace was making. Rhoda was a living and indelible example to her and the other young girls in the fact that beauty and character was not something you could put on, but it was something that was exuded from the inside. Rhoda was a lady of God's peace. She was calm, she was patient, and it was all from a solid faith. When other adults would look at some of the rambunctious boys as we ran around there, you might hear some of the other adults complain about the rascally boys, and they probably were right. But you'd never hear that term from Rhoda. She was always very pleasant. She was always had a smile. She had that pat on the back for us, and she was always encouraging. Very much an unrattled, even if we tried to unrattle them, and I don't think we did, but she was never rattled as an adult. She was always that great example of Christ's character to us. Probably even more than we realized at the time. I know thinking back, there are adults in a young child's life that form the basis of that child's character. And Rhoda, for me, was one of those adults in my life. As I witnessed her character, her Christian character, her Christ-likeness, in the way she treated us as children, as the way she would teach us songs and verses. It was something that has helped me direct decisions when I go back, and as children grow up and learn to make decisions, they do it off of some basis. And one of the adults in my life that I look back at who helped form that basis for me was Rhoda, in the way that she lived her Christianity. A Christian lady of grace and godliness. And I would say, Rhoda, thank you for your witness to me, for being an example and a great influence in our lives. We miss you now, but we look forward to worshiping with you again. Thank you.